he actually creates a philosophical interrogation about the meaning of life, but also about the meaning of death in his suicide. And I think that we can relate that very closely to many of you did talk about, colleagues here did talk about Hedayat's going back to his roots, going back to his to what he believed the real Iranian culture should be Persian culture. I think it has to do with a sense of belonging, what Isaiah Berlin calls a sense of belonging more than anything else. And if I have to say only a few words before finishing my intervention, I would say if we are talking about Hedayat's sense of belonging, it means that this is a national consciousness and not necessarily nationalism. He's against inflamed national consciousness. He's against nationalism as a sense of superiority, as an ideology, but he has a national consciousness. Now, we know that Iranians, they can have both. They can be very nationalistic, but they can have this national. Hedayat, I think he has a national consciousness, and this national consciousness, once again, I think has to do also with this experience that he has of modernity, but also of his own culture as an outsider. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jahanbeglu. And now, I wish I was in a position of introducing Mohsen Shahnazdar. Unfortunately, he's not in a condition to attend, but we are hoping that sometime next week, if everything goes right, I have done a dakhil time. Some Kalantari will be in Toronto, hopefully, and he's also scheduled to be in Vancouver. Let's hope for that. Now, the question and answer starts. Please, I may know some of you, but just give your name before you start asking the question. Anyone?
Here. I have a question.
Yes.
What do we know about Hedayat's sexual life? I think I read a book a while back about published his letters, and there was an affair mentioned there, and also there was mention of drug use. But I don't think there was any mention in the film about those issues. I think I'd be interested.
Very good question, and Dr. Katuzian knows that well.
I mean, in a sense, the answer that nobody knows the answer to that question. But
no, you use that.
What?
Bring it a little closer. No, use this. That's.
shall we this? Yes, and that. I see. Is that okay now? Do you hear me? Yes?
Use this one.
Hello? Yeah, good. Okay. And what I said was that in the ultimate analysis, nobody knows the answer to that question, or answers to such questions where hard evidence does not exist. But basing oneself on the man's life, on his attitude and behavior, on his fiction to some extent, but you should not assume, of course, that his fiction or anybody's fiction is autobiographical necessarily, but it will reflect the man's personality, especially in the case of psychofictions, which, as I described, are such as The Blind Owl and so many others, are about people of the author's own social class, and there is a great deal of judgment in them, and the judgments are usually negative. Now, basing oneself on all that, it is clear that Hedayat probably never had a loving relationship with a woman. And that he was otherwise, of course, longing to have one. As I said, I'm speculating to some extent, but reflecting on the man's psychofiction, you get the impression his narrators and anti-heroes in the science fiction certainly display this kind of the attitude. On the one hand, being very critical, as I described in the little piece I presented, of women as they are or they think they are, and longing for the love of women as they think they ought to be. Hence the contrast between the two types. The angel, in fact, he uses the term, or at least his narrators and anti-heroes use the term Feresh, the angel, in contrast to Lakote, harlot. And in his psychofiction, you never come across any female personality that is other than these two. Either it is an angel, and the angels, of course, angels don't exist, and therefore, in fact, they don't exist, like the ethereal woman of the blind owl, or the puppet behind the curtain of the puppet behind the angel being a puppet. Or the other way around, the Lakote or harlot types. In his psychofiction, you don't come across any female personality that is other than these two types. But in his critical realist works, where he is writing on the life of ordinary common folk, women are perfectly normal. They are what they are. They're human beings like any other human being. This contrast is quite noticeable between these two different categories of his work. So you see that I'm trying to answer the question. I'm talking about the man's works, because there is very little hard evidence about his own life, except for what I said, that it is certain that he never was in a loving relationship with a woman of any kind, although there is some evidence that he had sexual experience of that kind.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khatouzian. Dr. Jahanbegloo, any evidence of Hedayat's sexual modernity? Or maybe post-modernity?
No, I wouldn't put the question like that, and I don't know why you put it like that. No, I do agree with what Dr. Khatouzian said, and I do believe that, I think that Hedayat's experience of modernity is mainly an aesthetic experience, more than anything else. And
eventually, if I do believe that somehow if Hedayat never could love a woman, this certainly doesn't have anything to do with his experience of modernity. I mean, it goes back to mostly, as we see in some of his, is portrayed by some of his novels and writings, it goes back to his, I would say, much more psychological relationship that he has with the essence of his family life, or with the essence of his national life, more than I would say his experience of modernity. Though I don't know why you didn't refer to Farzaneh, what he says in his, Farzaneh has some passages in his book where he says that Hedayat, there's no way we can verify that. It's very difficult, but I remember very vaguely that Farzaneh talks about masturbation, and do you remember that?
Well, yes, I mean, but